I can also help.
Yep. Okay, so thing number one is my merging of having docs for the federated template, which is just the first one that got completed. Those PRs have been pending now for some weeks, and I'd really like to merge them because, among other things, I'm getting feedback from operator framework on the federated tweaks they want to make to the federated template, and I can't start on those until we actually merge the other ones. So,
Josh, just stop submitting stuff right when I go on vacation. I can review these today. How many reviews do you want before we merge it? Because it's just drafts. Like, do you just want
like one, well, except that we kind of have to merge it, then direct straight from draft into main right afterwards, because I can't merge the changes to the template until the docs are merged.
Yeah, they go together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I see what you're saying.
I'm just merging into draft because we want to get back into the habit of merging everything into draft first. So, but we'll need to do main like right after draft.
And that's the one that we'll get the TOC to review.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can review
well,
this
actually, that's
today.
the question is, do we need the TOC to review this? Or do we just need to notify them? Because docs for an existing template. Yeah.
I think since the template has changed, that we just need to notify them. Because this is just the how-to document for the existing template, right? It's just that because all we need to change in the existing template is not the contents of the template, but the embedded comments, the how-to stuff, and point them to the new how-to document.
I mean, it's up to you. Like, I feel like when I personally went through and did the process of extracting the comments into the how-to, I added so much extra flavor that it was a significant change. So I had people look over it a bit more, just to make sure I wasn't, I don't know, spinning it differently than I was originally reading, you know, if that makes sense. But I totally see what you're saying. I just don't know what we have
I'll
to
admit
do.
I'll admit that assertion is colored by the fact that these have been hanging for weeks, and if we have to get approval from the TOC members, then it'll be at least another week. And sadly, I'm kind of serialized on any of the stuff I'm doing with the docs. Like if I can't merge this, then I can't do anything else.
I mean, I feel like it's less about that. Did we change any guidance? If we change guidance, I think we should ask for, okay. Yeah. Then I'm fine with just merging it in with our review.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay. And I will go ahead and send an email notice to our 3 TOC members just in case they want to jump in. But I did actually notify the 2 TOC members at the time when I originally drafted this, so they have not had any comments. So. Okay. Let me bring the notes back up. Yep. Okay. So then this is not strictly governance work, but we have, we don't have a lot on the agenda today. So there's the contributor survey draft, which people have been working on. And one reason I actually wanted to bring this up in a meeting and not start comments on the docs is that I feel like we've kind of lost sight of what did we really care about finding out.
Yes.
Particularly like, you know, at least one of the reasons why this was originally raised in a previous general meeting was finding out um, finding out whether people are being why people are not contributing or why people are not contributing more, so that when we have these conversations with projects, we actually have general data to back it up.
My interest in the survey was mostly that I think in general we have a very strong feel about the barriers to contributing for new contributors, where it's not always clear what the barriers are or what's causing problems when it's like they're an experienced programmer, they know the domain, stuff like that. Like I feel like I don't always have the greatest answers around that. So I was just trying to get, you know, any type of feedback on what is causing the problem. Because it's super clear when it's like, oh, I don't know Git, I don't know this. Like you know how hard it is as like a starting fresh as a contributor. But when you already know Kubernetes and you're like, I just want to contribute, what are the things that are holding people back? That's the part where I go, I'm not quite sure, you know?
Yeah.
And since we're trying to give people advice, like on exactly that topic, I think we often over focus on net new contributors who are new to open source or new to whatever. But the more high value contributors who we're losing or not getting, I don't think we have great insight into why. So we can't give good advice.
Okay, so that's definitely something to find out. And the reason I wanted to bring it up is that if you look at the questions we actually have there for the contributor survey, they don't ask questions that would allow us to draw any conclusions on that.
Yeah, especially like looking at I hadn't looked at this in a while, and now I see that there's like an entire back nine to this that is like desired media headlines and a whole bunch of questions, I assume, to help
Right, yeah.
come up with those.
Those came from the CNCF, and
Mhm.
they have their things that they want to find out.
Yeah. It's getting kind of long, and I'm not confident that at least the answers I'm looking for are going to come out of this survey, and the survey's too long.
Yep.
It's a lot of questions.
So we probably need to make some edits to this today before the meeting with the CNCF tomorrow.
Or at least comments.
Yeah.
I mean, I would definitely say the survey is in the department of long enough that we would need to incentivize people to complete it. And then that brings its own set of baggage, because the problem with incentivizing people to complete it is you're also incentivizing people to lie. Speaking as somebody who's administered CNCF t-shirt giveaways, once we start giving stuff away, lying becomes a serious problem.
Yeah.
So
I think we shorten it.
Yeah.
Shorten the survey and not offer incentives is my take.
Yeah. Well, the reason that we brought the CNCF folks in is that we have trouble actually reaching contributors and potential contributors in terms of messaging.
Mhm.
And so we really needed help from their people to try to get the word out about this. But then getting that help means they have their own questions that they care about, and those are different from our questions.
So like looking through it, the questions that I'm super keen on is number 7. What are the friction points you've experienced?
Yeah.
That's what I really want more on. And honestly, just everyone should just get text box too, to talk about what they feel is in the way, you know? Like I like data, but I'm perfectly happy to just read 100 responses too, and come up with anything. You know, it doesn't have to be all quantitative questions.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like later on, we get into like how many non-CNCF projects you contribute to. Now we're comparing the CNCF to non-CNCF and stuff like that. And I don't know, if we wanted to cut questions, for me personally, some of that would be there because I'm not quite sure what advisory changes I would make based off of that. You know, if I was advising a project or writing a how-to for the website or anything, I don't know what I would do differently based off of like 12 and 13 and 14.
My main thought, I added those,
Mhm.
and my main thought behind adding those was two things. Number one, which is there's a big difference between somebody who's a new contributor to the CNCF. And by the way, it occurs to me that we don't actually ask them if they're a new contributor to the CNCF anywhere in the survey.
Mhm.
Somebody who's a new contributor to the CNCF, there's a big difference between somebody who's a new contributor to the CNCF but has contributed to 5 other open source projects versus somebody who just got out of college or coding school last week and is now wanting to contribute to the CNCF. Like those are two very different personas, particularly in terms of their expectations.
Do we get that though from 1 and 2 a bit? And then also we now
Yeah.
have one that says 10, which is how much you contribute. Like I feel like we could get that info from the existing questions.
You're probably right. You're probably right that we could actually condense these down and provide a couple more options for existing questions and then cut questions. That would be a good thing to do. The other reason for throwing that in there is the CNCF has a fair amount of sort of paperwork associated with it compared to completely independent GitHub projects.
You mean like the
And
DCO or CLA?
DCO or CLA is one thing. You know, for the more mature projects, we require governance rules, etc. And a bunch of the things that even that aren't necessarily required but are encouraged lead to projects being more process oriented.
Yeah.
And I would really like to know if that is helping people or dragging them down. And maybe there's a better way to ask that. There's a better way to ask that. Because in fact, we don't know if the other projects they contribute to are higher or lower paperwork than the CNCF. There are definitely projects such as OpenStack, for example, that have historically have had even more process requirements than the CNCF tends to have. So
Can I
we could
narrow
probably
in
ask the
on this a
question
little?
directly rather than asking it roundabout. Yeah.
So when you talk about process requirements and paperwork, like as a maintainer, I agree that the governance and all these other things that we ask are being asked of maintainers, and that's extra. As a contributor, how much do they feel those extra things when submitting a PR beyond the CLA, DCO?
I don't know, which is why I wanted to ask.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think now that you bring it up, I think it's much better to ask that directly rather than asking it of asking it of in a roundabout way, because it doesn't necessarily tell us the things that.
Do you want to edit that question right now, just so we
Yeah, well, I
capture
just
that?
crossed out 13.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The
Sure.
and then think about sort of drafting a question that more directly asks, hey, projects in CNCF have more process often have more process around contributing than wholly independent projects might have.
Mhm.
Does this process help you or hinder you? And give them probably like a slider rating combined with an essay question.
Yeah.
So,
One other demographic that I know that people are always asking for help with is maintainer diversity and bringing on specifically, it's a very specific type of person they're looking for, to be honest. They want people who are paid to contribute to the CNCF to become contributors and maintainers to their project so that multiple companies essentially are sponsoring the project, you know? I don't know if we ever say it like that, but like, that's my understanding of it. Could we get any good information about if we're losing those types of people from this? Would we kind of correlate it from assigned as part of my job to question 9 and then see if they're getting hit with specific things? Or because I feel like one of the questions is, you know, when I'm contributing for my company, what's holding, you know, I don't know how to ask the question, but I'm trying to figure out like, why isn't Microsoft or Google or whoever, people who work for these companies full-time as an open source contributor? Is there something holding them back from contributing to a project they care about on their company time, I guess? Is that worth trying to get at? Or do you think we can get it from the other questions?
Do you think we'd get that from I added a question that's just an open-ended text box question. Tell us more about the friction you've experienced. Would
Yeah.
that get at that? Or do we want to ask it more directly?
yeah, well, so one of the things for the friction stuff that I realized that I kind of want to break out is I feel like we really want to get people to tell us separately about friction they've experienced in the project versus friction they've experienced outside the project. Right? Because like my PRs take forever to get reviewed is perhaps something that we can do something about. My boss doesn't let me, my boss doesn't let me contribute on a regular schedule is not necessarily anything we can do anything about.
Yeah.
And also I feel like if we ask for those two kinds of friction separately, we'll get both. Whereas if we don't ask about them separately, we'll get one or the other, but not both.
Good point. Yeah.
I'm not sure how
You
to
can just
phrase
speak up,
that
Alexandre.
otherwise.
Yeah, Alexandre.
Hey, yeah. So I think this is where I think one of the meetings, Kim McCammon, I don't know how to pronounce it. That
Yes.
if I recall correctly, it was mentioned something around having like personas so that you can structure it a little better. I don't know if we have enough time to do that for tomorrow, or like we would have to think about the schedule there. But that's where having like personas that we can segment the survey to and ask like the questions, tailor the questions to the audience. So for example, we have the persona that would be, for example, an existing contributor, someone that's new and want to contribute, someone that is, for example, the maintainer, or so we start segmenting the survey so that we don't try and get like answers from everyone at the same time, because that like you kind of lose focus on what you're actually getting from the survey, and people actually can probably get bored and like not answer correctly some of the questions. So one thing Kim mentioned is like I can remember the specific keyword, but there was a keyword that wasn't so known for from their like marketing space and whatever, and we could change to another another wording that they understand. So maybe if we have more time, we can structure that and build those personas so we can tailor. I don't know if that fits like the tight schedule there.
Yeah, so she did actually put down a chart of personas in there. my concern about the personas that she's offered is they're very marketing oriented rather than being contributor management oriented, if you follow me.
Mhm.
That is, it's putting people into buckets based on how you would market to them, not so much into what their role is in the project. And so, I think that it's quite possible we want to look at, and part of it is several of the questions that we have are aiming at establishing persona.
Yeah, like 12.
And 11, both. So you combine 11 and 12, and that combines what kind of contributions do you make or not make, and how many of them do you make, and then if you add that to 10 as well, is we're actually seeing what the person's sort of job role is, and so those three combined give us a de facto persona. When Kim was on another meeting, I was asking her, because one of the things she was suggesting, and part of this is an idea to cut down the number of questions somebody individually needs to answer, was having sort of different paths to the survey based on the persona they end up in. The problem is that we don't at this time have questions that are persona specific.
But but that's where I think that's because we are drafting the questions right now, but we are doing it not that it's wrong, but we are doing it the reverse way. So instead of starting from knowing who we want to ask the questions and what we want from to get from them, we're actually starting from building the questions and then trying to figure out who fits that question and what we want from the question. So maybe now we would need a little bit more time, but we would have to get the questions that are already drafted there and start putting that into some boxes that fit into different objectives of what we want from the survey. So I think that's where we are kind of confused, because we started by getting the questions in there and starting ideating about it, but there isn't any structure yet. So that's where I think we would probably have to get some time to structure it and maybe merge some of the questions and change a little bit so we can have a better.
Well, we'd first need to figure out what the personas are, right? Because Kim has offered some personas there, but they're not appropriate for what we want answered. They might be appropriate for what the CNCF staff want answered, but they're not appropriate for us. And then we'd have to decide how much we actually know about those personas. Because one of my concerns always with persona-driven surveys is you have to be relatively confident that you know something about the personas. Because the problem always is, if you route the personas past certain questions that you feel are not appropriate for them, if you're wrong, you've just erased some potential knowledge. And in a worst case, if you put a potential surveyee in a position where no persona suits them, then you've just lost an entire response. So, because for example, so yeah, we need to go through that exercise first. We need to go through the exercise first of saying what other personas and how much do we confidently know about those personas.
I think at this point we probably, I was just gonna say at this point, I think we probably don't have time to do that. I think we're probably better off just cutting some questions and simplifying things. And like Carolyn said, I think having a few more free-form text boxes, I mean, it certainly makes the analyzing a little more difficult, but I think it's going to give us more of the kind of data that we actually want from the survey.
What are go on?
I was going to ask, is it possible that the results of this survey might be able to provide some more information to be able to create those personas in future?
Yeah.
Yeah, because right now, I look at the combination of the three questions that kind of establish persona, and I have some assumptions about where, say, doc writing contributors come from. But I
Hmm.
don't know that those are correct. Those are based on your personal knowledge of a handful of doc writing contributors. But I don't know if the people that I know are typical of the whole population or not.
Hmm. Can I just ask as
Yeah.
a general question regarding the flow and the format of it? Would there be any benefits in perhaps subcategorizing the questions? Perhaps like, a couple of them is around just establishing or identifying the background, of the contributor, and then perhaps their their personal experience or experience with the culture, and then I think there's a couple that perhaps sort of are getting more of an idea around their future ideas or suggestions about what can happen. Is it just a way of, or is the survey too sort of short and it's not really going to benefit that? Is there?
Oh, yeah, no, we'll definitely want to rearrange it. So
Just in terms of like, if there's summarizing, like there's 3 key areas for example that we want to, we want to get in terms of like who are they, what have they experienced, and what do they want to see, for instance.
I think yes, but also a lot of the questions that I think would end up ending in another category, I personally feel don't serve the original purpose of why we proposed the survey. Like a
Mhm.
lot of the ones added by the CNCF,
Yeah.
I vote to cut them because it's not going to help us with the original, how do we provide better advice to projects for recruiting and keeping different types of contributors.
Hmm.
I mean, honestly, the other problem I have looking at some of the CNCF questions is a lot of these feel structured to give a predetermined answer, honestly.
I mean, yeah, they say that desired media headlines. We want things
Yeah.
that back up these numbers so we can
Okay.
tweet X.
Yeah.
And like,
So
that's not the
that'll
goal.
mean, doing this on our own without assistance from their PR team. But
Oh,
the
because it adds a lot to the survey. And
yeah,
as a contributor, I am not interested in answering those questions because I don't see how they help. If I'm answering
Mhm.
questions about, what makes it hard to contribute because I see people are going to tackle these problems, there's a lot more motivation to fill out the survey.
Mhm.
Like one feels like a marketing survey and the other part feels like what we're trying to do. And I'm
Mhm.
not going to fill out a marketing survey just for funsies,
Yeah, there's a point that someone actually filling out the questions and whatnot, they just drop out and or just fill out anything just to, like myself, for example, if there are like so many questions that are not interesting to me or not within the things that I want to get across to give feedback and or not, I just drop from the website and I guess many people do that as well. So yeah, we probably either want to have one that's more if you want, like if we want to do something with CNCF, we can do a coordinate like a more general one to first understand the Jay said, like understanding, getting more like a general overview of the participants, and then we can run other surveys from that. But there is an issue that Josh mentioned like a couple of months ago, that there's so much surveys that anyone can do, so they start losing interest as well. So yeah, because yeah, we gotta one thing I want to understand why are we tied to having like to present it tomorrow for the talk meeting? Do we have any
Oh,
anything
no, we
that
wanted to give a bunch of feedback because Catherine is trying to coordinate with the CNCF marketing folks, because the original thought was to do a joint survey. So, for example, if we want to give the advice that a joint survey is not going to work, then it would be it'd be essential to give her that advice before tomorrow.
Yeah, and I will be in the meeting tomorrow as well.
Okay.
I think the right approach as a start, I mean, it's one meeting with the CNCF folks, right? It's not necessarily where we'll make every possible decision on the survey, but I think what we do is we push back on at least some of these questions, because it does make the survey really, really long, and see if we can figure out what couple of questions are most important to them, and maybe we can leave in a couple of questions to get their buy-in and their support and their help, without having it be an additional 9 questions. And we'll see what they say, right? I mean, if we need to go it alone, we can, but I think we can start by trying to push back a little bit.
Yeah,
Is there
because
a
we have 28 questions at the moment. And I think the original target was 10 to 15, which is still a lot. Still a
Mhm.
lot. And I don't know. I don't think that we're gonna get I think we're going to see people drop off with this many questions. Even
So let's
cutting
cut
it
some
in half,
questions.
we're gonna see drop off.
So let's cut some of our questions.
Yeah.
Because I think we
I guess what-
also have too many questions.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I've made some proposals on which ones to cut, but I would love
Yep.
your feedback on that.
I
Can
guess
we walk
Mostly-
through
we
and
can
just
offer
like-
something. We can offer something like not leaving them out, but having a strategy to run different surveys. So maybe we have one in common that we both like want to know about and would benefit from, and then we have separate ones, one more focused on what their objectives are from the survey, and one that's more focused on our objectives. So we have one main one, like general, that would benefit us, separate into 2 more surveys that are more focused on based on that first feedback and focused on what we actually want to achieve with them. Maybe we can gather buy-in that way, so that we can help each other and don't necessarily need to mix every question and every so
I don't know. I kind of feel like as hard as it is to get people to fill out a long survey, getting people to fill out multiple surveys is even harder.
Mhm.
but that would be for like we would we can actually separate the people we will run the second survey. So I don't know. I don't know. That's one way of
Is it,
yeah.
is it possible you can just sort of chuck in a question about, would you be interested in participating in a survey that's marketing specific, or some sort of compromise to show that you've acknowledged what CNCF want to identify, but again, just giving the surveyors an option, knowing that chances are they probably won't, but you're still allowing for them to have that option where they're, if CNCF really have this intent about getting marketing specific information, then you're giving people an option to do that as opposed to trying to cram everything in there.
Are you saying from the perspective of the like organizing the survey, or the participants that would answer the survey?
Well, I'm just guessing. I mean, the issue now is that obviously the list is too exhaustive and there's too much ground to cover. And you're creating a split in terms of the content that you're trying to identify. So, at the core of it is about getting that information from the contributors first and foremost. But CNCF are really intense in trying to get that marketing stuff there. Is there a way to perhaps say, look, in the interest of keeping it short and ensuring that we get quality engagement, can we, perhaps, as been suggested, a couple of core questions now, the really pertinent ones that they want to identify, and then just letting people know we're interested, or would you be interested in perhaps participating in another survey that's marketing specific, for instance.
That would be
opposed to-
one way.
So is that sort of what you're asking, or I'm just trying to be
Yeah,
clear?
I guess that's something that like we gotta we gotta think the best way we want to approach this, and then someone can discuss this tomorrow with them and see where they have like what they suggest and what from their perspective what would they change and how and whatnot, and then we can get together again and actually build what would be the deliverable. So
Okay, so in the interest of time,
will be suggestions, but
I will talk to them tomorrow and try to get their sense for this. But while we have everybody here, can we talk just a little bit about which questions to cut? Because do we care which projects they contribute to? Like, could we cut those first 3 questions?
I do. Kim actually had a good idea for condensing them, but I think we really do need to narrow it down to projects, because there's the distinct possibility that we could end up with, say, 50% of our, or, you know, even in a worst case, like 3/4 of our responses coming from contributors to the same project. And that means a very different thing than if they are distributed across all the projects that the CNCF
Okay.
has.
I was
but that can
suggesting
actually
combining.
hold
Sorry.
hold someone back from answering. Would be my guess.
Okay, so Carolyn suggested consolidating the first 3 into pick the top X projects you have contributed to, which I think probably gets us what we need without making it 3 questions.
Carolyn, you're going to say something else?
No, I was just trying to get that in.
Okay, yeah, and and Kim modified that with what I really like is specifically saying the question, the projects you want to supply feedback about. As in, you're going to answer a bunch of questions. Please flag which projects you're answering these questions about, and
Yeah.
make that completely clear. Because then that avoids the problem of somebody checks off 5 projects, but the rest of their responses are really entirely about Porter. Yeah.
But why do we want to know like the specific projects they're answering
Again,
to?
because if 100% of our responses are coming from Kubernetes contributors and we have no responses from contributors for any other project, it redefines our data.
So it's for us in the analysis and how we use the data.
But can
we
we
care-
do that?
we-
Go on.
Sorry, for question 4, do we care which projects they're a maintainer for if we've asked the select all projects that you contribute to and want to provide feedback on your experience?
No, actually, we can make this much easier and say, are you a maintainer for any of these projects, and make it yes or no.
Okay.
We do care if they are a maintainer.
Yes, we do. Yeah. But I don't think we care which projects well, that's fine. What about question 5?
I think that's helpful because otherwise, like, you could check a bunch of things on 7, but still be pretty happy with how it's going, you know?
Yeah.
And if you don't have that question, you really can't tell if overall they're super unhappy and have left or going to leave. And I guess I don't think
Mhm.
we've asked that. Have you stopped contributing because of this? Would maybe be another way to get that.
Okay, so we have a couple of text box questions about good experiences, one about friction. I added one, Josh, kind of getting at the frictions. If you could reword that, that would be
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
And then what about like 10, 11, 12?
Yeah, well, those
13.
are persona establishing questions.
Yeah.
And so the one question would be, is there some way we could condense those?
Mm-hmm.
Because like 10 is basically what's their time allotment for contributing, and 11 is how much are they contributing, And 12 is what kind of contributions?
Do we care about 13? How many
don't-
non-CNCF projects do you contribute to? I don't. Because we do have a question, a text box question below it. If there's a difference between contributing to CNCF and non-CNCF projects, what's the primary difference? Which I think
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah.
I think we do care about, and that gets kind of at
Okay.
that question.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna cut that one. I think we cut the gatekeeping question because I think that'll come up during friction. Question 16.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to know if they contribute to other things in the CNCF beyond the projects?
And that's a good question. If we're in the mood to cutting questions, that's one I would consider sacrificable. Because
Okay.
it's not really what we're asking about. Like, we care, but we don't care that much. I care more about 19, what part of the world do you live in, which should actually be bundled with the other persona establishing questions. Because, for example, I have a theory that folks from Asia find it much harder to contribute to CNCF projects. And I would like to
Yeah.
see that theory demonstrated or not in the data.
And maybe that's like one question, for example, is language something that keeps you from, or is
Yeah,
language a barrier for contributing instead of
Yeah, we've got that as one of the
coffee or-
current friction items. Alexander, if you look over, this is actually honestly for everybody to look over. One of the things we'd be doing with eliminating the number of questions is we want to populate the checklist of potential friction items and make sure that everything we think of is in there.
Mhm.
Because like I put in there an item, language, communication, time zone barriers, but maybe we want to break that out into a couple of separate issues, right? Because time zone barriers could be different, separate from, say, language barriers.
Okay,
The,
so we've cut our bit down to 12, including combining the first 3 into a single question, assuming I counted right.
Mhm. Which
Uh,
seems okay. Seems like an amount people would finish without necessarily needing to be incentivized.
Can I just ask for
And
question
that's
60 on the-
assuming we can get the CNCF to cut some of their questions at the end too.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jay, go ahead.
Oh, that's all right. For question 6, do you want to ask why as well? Or is it just about knowing the project to try and just give general information?
I think, sorry, well, my comment was, I think this question should be more like, tell me a good experience you had when contributing to a project, because I don't think we care. You're right. We don't care necessarily which project.
We do under some circumstances, like if they say, hey, project X works with, I think we care about both. I think we want to ask them which one and why. Because if they're going to say, hey, this project has really terrific management of good first issue, then we want to go and talk to that project and say, hey, y'all, how do you manage your good first issues? And would you be willing to talk to other projects about it?
Whoops. Oh, jeez. I just cannot type.
My thing with that is that do you think we can get some of that from the data itself, from the like requests and issues, instead of asking? Or do you think it would be like different? Because we could get into the issues and see if there's any comments there, or anything that's
Hey, if you're able to analyze GitHub information and actually tell whether people are having are utilizing good first experience, good first issue in a way that encourages contributors, then that would be a wonderful tool to have, but we don't currently have.
Okay, so I reworded question 6.
It's not a way that we currently know how to analyze the raw data. It's the sort of thing that I would turn over to an AI/ML intern, because it requires things like sentiment analysis.
Mhm. Yeah, agreed.
The
Yeah.
and plus, I don't necessarily know the universe of all the good experiences someone could have.
Yeah. And what made that experience be good? If that's like a quick response,
yeah.
or if that's like, yeah. So after this goes through the meeting tomorrow, then we would have some time to like get to a final draft, or how would be the timeline after
Yeah.
the meeting?
Yeah, I mean, because the next step is whether we're going to be trying to do a combined survey or not. Right? If we're not doing a combined survey, then we can take our list of questions, clean them up, turn it into a survey template, and get ready to send it out.
Just to know, are there any questions proposed from the CNCF that we think would be helpful to us? Or is it literally, we've asked what we care about and they're adding more, but it won't, like, we wouldn't have picked it and just thrown it in if we had done this survey just by ourselves? Just like, so we're talking to them, we can get a feel for like, if we were compromising on questions, which ones would be higher value to keep?
Yeah. So,
Number 8 is kind of interesting on there. Number 8 on their list. The top career benefits for contributing. Maybe. I don't
Mhm.
know that I really care about any of the stuff. I certainly don't care about certifications.
yeah, the and
I
well,
guess
some of these
that
is
that
like
could
4
be an
and 5,
indicator that,
right? They've got
I don't
recent
even know what
security
they're about.
issues without any explanation of what that's about, and I haven't been able to get an answer from them on that. The so I mean that's just a classic example of a bad question.
Yeah.
Just completely aside of whether or not you wanted to know the answer will mean nothing. The so yeah, I mean I would say if we didn't care about survey length, which we do, but if I didn't care about survey length, I would be vaguely interested in question 1 and doing question 3 as a follow-up to question 10. Do you follow me? As in basically saying, hey, is this a person who would contribute more if they could find a job that involved cloud native technology or a job that supported upstream contribution? But again, it's not something we're trying to, because our goal here, right, is to figure out what's blocking people from contributing or what's helping people contribute. That is information that we can give the projects. That's something they can do something about, right? That is the critical part of our survey. We want to know other things, but it's less important. And you know, the if I had another job is definitely falls under the heading of less important. So from that
So would
perspective,
we
out of it,
have-
yeah, I would agree with Dawn that 8 would be like if we had to take one and only one question, it would be 8, because 8 at least tells us something about contributor motivation.
Yeah.
Just another one quickly for the original questions for one of the checkboxes for number 7. Is it about slow Slack or email support, or the general quality of? Is it more about speed, or is there possibility people are answering things pretty quick, but it's not really providing the support?
Or they're answering things quickly, but not the person who's taking the survey. So the yeah, I'd say poor Slack or email support.
or low response
Probably a better way to phrase that.
from maintainers or something like that.
I like that better because then it isn't specific to Slack or things like that.
We could actually, I mean, this is kind of a, pick as many as apply. We could do both. I do really like adding slow response from maintainers. I think that's a really good friction point that we should include. So would we be happy if we could get the CNCF to narrow down their questions to 2 to 3?
I
Yeah, that
guess
wouldn't be a
I guess nine from them is actually somewhat helpful if we can word that right, because that's actually something we could actually add for one of ours, but we can use theirs to understand if some of what percentage of the contributions are actually like part of a certification or some course or whatever that they took, so that we can use that as one metric that
None of the,
we could add that to the other one that we had. I think that like 10, but
none of the
I don't know if-
certifications involve contributing to any project.
Yeah, they're all around using the cloud native technologies as opposed to contributing. So they're more user-based than contributor-based.
Yeah, it would be more actually including something with 8. It would be like a single option saying, I got involved because I was taking the certification. So in other words, you would take like 8 and you would add an option E of I got involved in a project because I was taking the certification. So that is, certification does not directly lead to any contributions, but it could do it indirectly. You had to learn the project. When you started learning the project, you noticed there were problems. But it would make more sense as added to a motivation question than, and we don't care about which particular certification it was. If you follow me.
Mm-hmm. I
So
don't
we
see here, but
are over time.
Okay.
one last thing I would note, I didn't find anything about how they started their like open source journey. I don't know, maybe that will help us have some sense of like if they started from a hackathon, from some events, from some like some classes that they took, or like how they actually started.
Now you have a persona specific question. That would actually be a persona specific question, right? Because it only applies to relatively new contributors. Nobody cares how my journey started because my journey started 25 years ago. So that would in fact be a persona specific question. And one of the things that I previously said is that none of the existing questions actually ask somebody if they are a new contributor, which I kind of feel I need to work into one of the questions to at least find that out.
But then you have to define like what's new, because
I'd be happy with, have you
I'm
started contributing in the past year?
Yeah. Say I
Yeah,
would actually
something
be
like
okay with not defining it and leaving it up to, do they think they're a new contributor?
Yeah.
or when did you start, and then it's open to
Because I can definitely come on
when and how.
with circumstances where somebody who started a year ago, I would still not feel like they were a new contributor. Because if they started a year ago, but they started with advanced programming skills and started contributing 40 hours a week, at this point, they're no longer a new contributor. They're probably a maintainer on something at this point. So
yeah, you've won me over to if they feel like a new contributor or not.
Yeah. So the question is there an existing question we can work into that without adding a new question? Because that would be lovely.
I guess that would
to not add a question.
I would add some the question actually in the beginning, so maybe the first or second, because then it gives like the other ones are just like follow-ups. It's kind of weird. You ask the question after you already asked for like what they contribute to and like friction points and whatever. So that may be one of the first ones.
I was just hoping we could do it without adding a question.
What if we made
okay,
10
okay.
multi-checkbox and then just added, I'm a new contributor?
So the problem with that is that all of the other options are exclusive. Although
I mean, some of our
Although, do
questions
they
that we
have
could
to be? Do they
remove
have to
if
be
they were
exclusive?
checkboxes, like C and D.
Yeah.
We could get rid of and use it as a combination of A and B.
well, the well at work but not as an assigned task actually is its own thing.
Well, that's why
Um,
assigned is part of my job is A, right? Like it's
Right,
basically my job to do this.
right.
But if we got rid
Do I
of
do it
C,
on my own time or
Yeah, okay.
at
So
work?
turn that one, restructure the answers to that, turn it into a multi-select, and then we can actually add I'm a new contributor as an option. And we can also add I'm not a new contributor, but I am new to the CNCF as another option to sort of capture the people who are experienced in contributing to open source, but not to CNCF projects. Okay, so yeah.
I guess
done.
that's enough for
Surveys are hard,
the
folks.
for the meeting, and then
Okay,
yeah,
so we'll keep working on this. I think Dawn has enough ammunition for the meeting. I just want to say, you know, if they really want to ask those specific things because they want to include them in a keynote, which it kind of sounds like they do, then we might have to not do the surveys together.
yeah, I would say just try keeping the door open in case we like find ways, but yeah, we probably have to think about that, not mixing those, but keeping the door open in case we while we review this.
okay, I'm just typing out a note to Catherine to have her review some of this stuff before the meeting with the CNCF, but I have to go because it's late here and I'm
Yeah.
tired.
Yep, I have more meetings.
All right,
you
bye
so much.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
See ya.